Last fusers. So I recorded the demo yesterday, and unfortunately it was split screen because I forgot to spotlight myself. So you can't see half of what I'm doing in that video. So this is Retro Squares, take two. First things first, I am going to screen share the rubric. We're going to cover what exceptional work looks like and what the expectation for this assignment is going to be. So, Retro Squares rubric. I'm just going to cover the A work because I know you guys are all A students. First thing you need to have with your retro squares is up to 3 layers in some areas. So just like your scatter platter, you'll have a clear layer, a layer of squares, and then one more layer on top. Love to see a little additional 4th tiny squares on top. I think that looks really stellar. Student uses squares, basic shapes. You can use rectangles too. It's more to demonstrate that you know how to use the cutter and the breaker, right? This is the next skill we're learning, and it's the first precise shape that you'll be making. So I want to know that you can cut a straight line and that you can make squares and rectangles. The piece is well constructed. The student put a lot of effort and thought into the assignment. So for construction, we want those squares to be touching, right? Like I don't want a bunch of wonky squares, so we're looking for something that's kind of flush together like this on your clear base. Visible color scheme, and I had said, and it's in your turn-in document, I want you to relate the color scheme to yourself in some way. So I want it to be representational of an interest you have or a color scheme that you really like. And I want you to explain to me a little bit why you chose those colors. And I know that's a little bit weird for you that are at home. You have some kind of limited colors to work with, but you know, do your best. If you like really love blue and that's why it's in there, think about why you love blue. Is it because it reminds you of the ocean or the sky, or like you have green? Why do you have green in there? You know, do you really love Legend of Zelda? Do you love being out in the forest? Tell me a little bit about yourself with your art. I think it's really more effective to make art we're invested in. And so I want you to be thinking about how you can invest even in a really kind of rigid assignment where you're just cutting squares. There's always a place to put a little bit of yourself into it. And so I want to know a little bit about you and give you the opportunity to do that. So for today, we'll talk about materials you're going to need, and I'll tilt my camera down so you can see what I'm working with here. You're going to need your cutter. This is the guys, there's a little wheel on the top. You can see, I don't know if I can get that close enough for you guys to see. It's still sort of blurry because I think it's trying to focus on my face, but there's a little wheel on the top there, and that's what we're going to use to score our glass before we break it. And then you should have 2 sets of pliers. This is the larger set that's in your kit. These are called breakers, and the difference is they're about double as long, and there's a line on the top. So backside no line, top side line, and you want that line to be on top when you're breaking. You'll line it up with your score mark, and that's how you'll get that nice even cut. I want to show you some examples, some retro squares. So let me go grab some. I'll be right back. So some really great examples of projects once they're fired, and these all have about 4 layers, including their clear. They look like this. So you see that we've got some rectangles, we've got some squares, but it's not a uniform grid. I think it looks a little more interesting if you've got kind of some variation, but there's that base layer. It looks like they have a dark red, a lighter red, and a yellow. I'd like to see you guys using about 3 colors, if not more. I think 2 colors, it's really hard to get a nice contrast. So let's look for at least 3 colors, even 4 or 5, like with this one. They've got light blue, light green, black, and white. And that looks really fun. It kind of has that, like it's kind of a 60s theme. It's calling it retro squares. So that's what your finished piece is going to look like. You'll start by cutting some bigger squares and then move down to some smaller squares. I have some cut squares that I did from last demo, but I also have a large sheet You are going to want something that's pretty good size. I mean, you can use bits like this too. I can cut this off here. But you know, your scrap is going to be hard to use until you get to your top part of your retro square. So you're going to start at the very beginning and cut some bigger out of a sheet of glass. I chose this sheet of glass as well. It's really beautiful because it's got all this patterning on it. But these type with the patterning, they tend to be a little bit textured. I don't know if you can see on the camera there, but there's some texture happening there. And they're a little bit hard to cut, and that's kind of why I wanted to use this one today, because this definitely has like a side that's smoother and a side that's more rough. And I'm going to cut on the smooth side. Okay. Last thing I want to talk to you about is be sure to wear your safety equipment. So I wear glasses, so I don't need to use the glasses that came in the kit. But if you don't wear glasses, please wear your safety glasses. And I'm going to wear some gloves, and you should also have that in your kit. So are my gloves, got my glasses, have my breakers, my cutters, and I'm going to cut this piece of glass. And I will tilt my camera again so you can see just what I'm doing. Demo went so well yesterday, you guys. I'm sorry it got cut off. Hopefully I can do a nice even cut with this one too. We shall see. Yeah, there's this glass is a little bit textured, so it's going to be a bit of a challenge. I like to use a ruler. You can freehand this, but I think especially beginning, it's a good idea to use a ruler. Just until you get comfortable cutting. Durham totally freehands this, no problem, but I am still getting used to it, and I like nice, even, straight squares, so I'm going to use a ruler as a guide. When I'm scoring the glass, first thing, I want to make sure this screw, so you see there's no screw, the screw is going the direction that I'm cutting. So I want to do, if I'm going this way, my screw is out this way. When I hold it, I'm holding it, I don't hold it like a pencil. This is going to give you a weird angle. You want it straight up and down because that's where your wheel is. So you'll hold it like this when you cut. And I'm not moving my arm. I'm going to set it and I'm going to move my body, right? One clean fluid movement. A lot of times I see kids cutting glass like this, scoring the glass like that, but you don't get a smooth break that way. You get all these little jaggedy whatevers, and it's very easy for your glass to break kind of in a weird way because it's got all these kind of little directions it can go. And think about like a chip in your windshield, right? All those little splinters, those are all options for where the glass can kind of start to spread into a crack. And that's kind of what we're doing, is we're just telling it where we want it to crack so that we can eventually break it. So we want it to have one clear direction where it's going to go. And so we're going to do one smooth fluid motion. Okay. So I've got my cutter straight up and down against my ruler, and we'll just go like this. Can you hear that sound? That's a good sound. That's how I know it's making a mark on the glass. You can even see that mark, my score mark there on the glass, and that's going to tell it where I want it to break. So I got my breakers. I've got my line up. See a lot of people trying to do it upside down, and it makes a mess. I mean, it just doesn't cut straight. You get all kinds of weird. So if you're breaking glass and it's not breaking along your line, make sure that you're holding your breakers right side up. Okay. So line it up. Either side of the line is on my score mark, and squeeze, right? And that's how I'll get my first chunk of glass. Easy, easy. And then I can start to make my squares. So I was thinking I might like to have a rectangle in this thing. So maybe I'll cut one that's a rectangle. Maybe I'll do a couple that's a rectangle and I can cut them down. So I'll do like 3 of these, right? And come back through with my breaker. Break. Break. This is pretty controlled too. I know when we were doing our scatter platter and I was having you guys nip glass, I definitely wanted you to nip into something, but this is pretty controlled. So you shouldn't need to nip into anything, but you know, maybe put it on a surface to catch, because there's still little shards of glass. I don't know if you guys can see, but there are still little shards of glass even when you're breaking. So you can always break into a container if that's where you feel comfortable, or just, you know, on some cardboard or surface that's easy to clean. Say usually no carpet. Hard floors are much easier to get back. So now I have my squares. Right? Right. I'll come over, take my clear base, I'm gonna grab some glue. Always forget something. There's always some material I need that I don't have. And I like to kind of, before I commit to my design, I like to kind of arrange it out first. And at first it gives me a good idea of like where my straighter cuts are. So that's helpful. And kind of get an idea about how I want to arrange these squares, right? And see, I think it's kind of interesting to have like a big chunk maybe off to one side. Maybe I'll do some of this light blue as well. Freehand it and see how I do. Oh, that wasn't too bad. Getting better. Cut. Right. And cut. So I'm going to arrange a bit here. And I'm not going to do this whole thing. You don't need to see that for the sake of this video, but I kind of want to get some things down and then show you what it would look like. Maybe I'll put a square here. You know, I've got this little side part here, so I'm thinking like, maybe I could use a little blue over there, and I can like intentionally cut a size to what I need, right? Do a little break. Oh, that's wonky. So, and if I have it like this, right, that's 3 layers. But like I said, I think it looks really nice to just even have a little extra 4th layer, right? Hopefully that's looking good. That makes sense. Once I've got my squares kind of how I want them, and I'll cut down some of that orange, then I'll glue them into place, and then I'll be ready to fire. And that is your retro squares assignment. Hopefully that made sense. If you have any questions, of course, email me. You can Teams chat me. You can ask in class if you are a hybrid student, or if you're remote, you can ask on the Teams meeting. But that is how you cut or score and break glass and make squares. And we'll move on to some more complex, you know, we start just kind of rough cut, then like more controlled cut, and then we'll look at cutting curves with our fishes. So super excited to see your color schemes and what you come up with. And yeah, let's get cutting.